biggest
The
gun
really
out there.
decorated.
Okay. Hey, do you have
See,
Cool.
but I've had to adjust my diet.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, May 10th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Have a roll call.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Here.
Alderman Pouquet.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Worth.
Here.
Alderman Garrell.
Here.
Alderman Hawkins.
Here.
Alderman Urban.
Here.
Alderman Adams.
Here.
Mayor Avendroth.
Here. We have a quorum. Alderman Worth.
I'd move to suspend the rules to take up the TIF incentive because it shouldn't take very long, and we have a consultant who's here and being paid while we're sitting here. So if we could take up whichever item that is briefly before we move on to the item that will be longer, would save us some money.
We have a motion to suspend the rules and a second to take up item 7G. Call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Urban.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
No.
Did you say no? 7-1, motion passes. We'll now take up item 7G, Resolution 3380, a resolution authorizing a development agreement between the City of Mequon and P2 Development Company, LLC, with a town center TID incentive in the amount of $250,000.
I'd move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Urban.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
No.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
7-1, and Resolution 3380 is adopted. We're going back to our public hearings. We have public hearings for ordinance 1467 and 1468. Looking for a motion?
I'd move to go into public hearings on both items.
Second.
Motion and a second to open public hearings on ordinance 1467 and 1468. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are now in public hearing. Ordinance 1467 is an ordinance amending a planned unit development approval for the Sarah Chudnow campus located at 10995 North Market Street, reducing the overall site acreage from 19.4 to 16.9 acres. This was tabled by the Planning Commission in February, recommended by the Planning Commission in April, and the first reading was at the Common Council in April. And Ordinance 1468, which is a companion ordinance, amends Chapter 58 of the City of Mequon zoning map by lakeside development for a 10-acre property located immediately south of 11104 Oriole Lane from R3, single-family residential, to R3 with a planned unit development to allow for a 9-lot single-family residential development. This was tabled by the Planning Commission in February, recommended by the Planning Commission in April, and the first reading was at the Common Council in April. We have people who have registered to speak, and I'll read through these. Suda Waggle is in support and wishes to speak.
My name is Sudha Wagle, and I'm Mequon resident for close to 50 years. Lately, I have seen many long-term residents in Mequon build their homes in other areas because lack of buildable lots on municipal utilities. I'm in favor of this project because this project will increase the revenue for the city via taxes, with 9 homes averaging about $750,000, which is almost $7 million increase in the tax base. It will enhance the looks of the area and increase the surrounding property values. change from tax exempt to taxable property, even increase in inventory of vacant lots, which with city services, which there is a currently shortage. I'm very familiar with lakeside developments. They built my home in Stonefields, and they have created some of the finest projects in Stonefields. The preserve at the Glen Oaks and the enclave in Door County. Also several commercial properties in Mequon. Lakeside built homes featured in Midwest Living Magazine, Better Home and Gardens, and so I know their homes will be quality homes. I believe it would be aesthetically pleasing to have a small cluster development opposed to 4 houses in 4 driveways onto a Oriole Lane. There will be continuity in an area of Mequon where there is no continuity, with single driveway instead of 4 or 6 driveways. For this reason, I support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Kathleen Tracy is opposed but does not wish to speak. Keith Tracy is opposed but does not wish to speak. Laura Meyer is opposed and doesn't say if she wishes to speak. Laura, do you wish to speak? No, thank you. Okay, thank you. Nicholas Meyer is opposed and perhaps would speak.
Your Honor, can you see the addresses when you?
Yeah.
Because I want to get a feel for where
Want me
people
to
are
read
from.
the addresses?
Well, yeah, when you're saying that.
10841 North Oriole Lane.
Yes, yeah, I'm Nicholas Meyer, and I've lived in Mequon for a few years now, and we moved in the area, which is very close to being across the street from this proposed plan. And I'm opposed from it because I think it's going to change the area negatively. I like how there's the trees in that area. I think it's going to bring down our property value and bring more people to the area. And I'm worried also about it altering the wetland, the water table in the area, or making our land perhaps more wet. I understand that area, it's controversial whether that's a wetland itself and whether building can really be done there. So I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Ellen Leaney is opposed and does not say if she wishes to speak. Ellen? No. Ellen is 10837 North Oriole Lane. Lisa Lamb, 10925 North Oriole Lane, is opposed and wishes to speak.
A couple things. I brought a thumb drive with some photos on it that I wanted to share that goes with some of the things I wanted to talk about. Also, I was wondering if the protest petition that we initiated was going to be mentioned.
Can you pull the microphone closer to your mouth?
I hear you.
Yeah.
I was wondering if the protest petition that has been initiated was going to be discussed.
I don't know that we discuss it, but we do have one.
Well, we'd like to know the status.
Right. Generally, that's something we would discuss as part of the action item itself. There's a memo within the packet, and we usually would discuss that at that time.
Okay. Now, as far as the pictures that I brought, are you going to navigate? Okay. I guess I'll just run through this. I guess for me, I've been involved in, some of these meetings, and I was at the April Planning Commission meeting, and to be honest, I don't understand why this plan was even voted on, why this rezoning was even voted on in April. The reason I say that is On February 9th, Ms. Tollefson wrote a memo to the Common Council where she stated, staff recommends to the Planning Commission that the rezoning be tabled until the following issues are resolved, that the DNR approval for the wetland fill and determination of required setback is resolved, and also identification of the specimen trees that will be impacted by the proposed development. On April 12th, the day after this rezoning was passed, the DNR was contacted, and they had absolutely no idea about this development. They hadn't received any field permits, they knew nothing about it. And in fact, Kathy, I don't want to get her name wrong, Kramaz, and I quote, "I am not aware of this project. Any filling of the wetlands will need DNR permits, and as far as I know, they have not yet started the DNR process." Then she goes on to say, "Kim or Jack, any idea where this is at?" So right there, you know, being at meetings and hearing a lot of dialogue about the DNR being contacted and what we're working with them, and it turns out that it was not true. The other thing, it was the specimen trees. That was the other thing that needed to be resolved. At the April 11th Planning Commission meeting, at the very last minute, the latest site plan was presented to the commissioners. And on it, there were 9 of the 22 specimen trees identified. Now, because this plan was presented at the very last minute, you know, it was dated, I mean, the plan itself was dated, I think, March 26th, and I'm not sure exactly why nobody saw it until the April 11th meeting. At any rate, I emailed Forrester Baker to ask why all the specimen trees hadn't been identified. And he was very vague, and he just said, the 9 trees have been identified. I'm like, well, I can see that, but what about the rest of them? So right there, to me, that's another thing that hasn't been addressed. So why did this move forward? In addition to that, throughout all these meetings, there has been the definite impression that the 4 lots on Oriole Lane and 2.5 acres from Sarah Chudnow were part of this 10-acre parcel. And as it turns out, only 3 of those lots and a request to take, I think it's 4.5 acres from Sarah Chudnow, is the actual plan. So, I mean, when you look at the verbiage in the planning commission packet, it's nothing, I mean, it's very misleading. We were all under the impression that this was an entirely different plan than it was. Plus, the site plan first had 12 houses, then it had 9 houses. Then when they realized they had specimen trees and a lot of wetland, and they moved it all around. And as it turns out, right before the vote was taken on April 11th, only 8 of the 9 houses can be connected to the sanitary sewer, because that sewer is at capacity, and I don't think that's news to anyone here. So, I mean, that's just one more thing where voting on a plan that wasn't really accurate, the things that were supposed to be taken care of weren't. So it's just very confusing as to why it went forward. That said, we have a lot of issues with flooding in our area, and this has come up many times. I took some pictures just of today, and we've got some from another time. I've been emailing a little bit back and forth with Scott Humber from Lakeside, and he has assured me that the drainage pattern goes from east to west using the culvert that's under Oriole Lane, and that we will not be impacted in any way by additional water. Well, that's just not true. First of all, the drainage pattern goes from south to north, and I do have a memo from Guy Hansen that backs that up. But at any rate, I decided to, since it was raining today, I decided to walk down about 70 feet from my home and look at this culvert that runs under Oriole, and the water is running from west to east. It is not running from east to west. So there's all this, in fact, you can, Jack, if you want to open up that thumb drive, you can look at some of what I'm talking about here. So, you know, on top of all of this, I mean, of all places to try and put this development. Why are you trying to put it in the middle of a swamp? It just doesn't make any sense. Nobody seems to understand the drainage patterns, and I mean, our property is just a mess every time it rains. So this is only going to make it worse. I don't care what anybody guarantees. There were guarantees made when Sarah Chudnow was built, and that put water in a lot of people's basements and backyards, and I just don't have confidence that we aren't going to be impacted by this. Let's see, I had a couple other things I wanted to bring up. At a couple of the meetings, there have been comments made that we have a landscape issue, and that's why we have all this water that stands in our front yard. We have lived in this home for a little over 2 years, and after we realized we had some issues with water in the front, I went to the city, and I was denied a fill permit because there is a sliver of wetland in there. So every time I hear from somebody from Lakeside or elsewhere saying the area needs to be filled and regraded, and that will take care of the issue, number one, that just dumps the water somewhere else. Number two, we've been told we couldn't. And if that's all changed now, then we'd like to be reimbursed for the $13,000 pond that we had carved into our yard to address some of these water issues. There's another point that I wanted to bring up, and this is just something that is a little unsettling. I keep hearing about this demand for this type of housing, and that area is so desirable. Well, first of all, it's not, because the sewer is a major problem, and there's flooding. I mean, it's mostly wetlands in there. But what I don't understand is the property where the Children's Hospital is being built was designated to be residential, a PUD residential. And in order to have it rezoned so the Children's Hospital could be put there, which was quite recent, there was a considerable amount of rezoning that had to be done. In fact, there was I don't have it in front of me right now, but the JCC had an amendment that they did not want that to be commercial. So that was like an extra hurdle that had to be jumped over in order for that parcel to be changed. I guess it's, okay, so why wasn't that property purchased? I mean, it's right there. It was already zoned. It just doesn't make sense to me. The other thing is there are other sites that are available that are big enough. There's one off of Donges Bay that's going to have sewer within 2 years. So this is not the only location. There are other options. And I do question what the demand is. I mean, I keep hearing that. Some of it seems kind of rehearsed from people who come up and say, this type of housing is really in demand. We looked at a single-family condominium that was off of Mequon Road, and it was very nice, brand new, and sat on the market for a very long time. Very nice area. So I question whether or not people are really banging down the doors trying to have this type of housing. I question it. Do you want to run through some of those now?
Sure.
Okay.
Because that's not going to last very long that far. That close to my reach.
I unfortunately can't read the title of each of those slides, but I believe that one is from probably April of 15. That is the north side. That's our neighbor to the south of us. They have issues with water in the front as well. That drains from the south over our property and into the wetland that's right next to us in the north. That's the north of our property, that's how it looks a lot of the time. To the north, that's all wetland, and that's where Lakeside wants to, once the drainage really goes from east to west, dump more water into that wetland space that's right next to us. I can guarantee our foundation's going to fail if that happens. But every time it rains, it's pretty much what our yard looks like. That is the flow of water that goes from south to north in between the 4 lots that are on our drive. As you can see, that's full of water much of the time as well. And I should mention that my home is directly across from where this road is proposed to be built. So there would have to be wetland filled in there, which means water is going to be displaced. That is the back corner of our yard. That's the northwest corner, which is underwater because all the water that flows from the south to the north comes through that corner and then it goes into the wetland. That's what it looks like when it's been kind of dry. Sometimes in August we'll have a few weeks where there's nothing, but that's why we decided to just carve a pond right there because, you know, the water doesn't drain, so, and that's what it looked like at Christmas. So, and we have a very, very small area that is considered, quote, wetland. Across the street, it's just loaded with them. I just cannot understand why anyone thinks it's a good idea to put 9 houses over there. It's a terrible idea. These people are going to have water everywhere, like we do. Okay, this one, I moved my phone kind of crooked, but it's showing that the water that Scott Humbert was certain drained from east to west really is draining from west to east right there. And it's all going right across into that wetland area on the east side of Oriole Lane. I just took a video of it because I don't think Scott believed me. Just like he told me that the water really doesn't run from south to north through my front yard, but that's okay.
That's all I got.
Okay, that's fine. I did have some pictures of the culvert that's on the east side that it's all jammed up. It's all blocked, so there's a lot of water that's backed up into the lots on the east side of where they want, no, it's actually where they want to build. So I hope this gives an understanding as to how serious this problem is. I mean, we had no idea what we were getting into when we bought this home. And I know there's been some discussion about, well, people can do whatever they want with their land. If it's a wetland, they can build on it. But this is different. This is a developer who's going to put homes in to people who really don't understand what they're getting into, like we did. And I just don't think it's right. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Jim Locatelli, 10925 Oriole Lane, is opposed and wishes to speak.
Hi, my name is Jim Locatelli. I live at 10925 North Oriole Lane. I am opposed to this proposed development for several reasons. One, I live directly across the street from the proposed entrance to this development. One of the reasons I'm opposed is the known sewer capacity issues in our area. And I'm not an engineer, but I understand the sewer line runs right down Oriole Lane. your staff has recognized that there are sewer capacity issues. At least 2 homes on Oriole Lane have had recent sewer backups. Your staff, and I'm taking the information from your Planning Commission minutes, your staff has stated that the plans for expanding the sewer capacity or the project would not be completed until 2 to 5 years from now. I don't understand with that time frame how you can add more sewer capacity issues to a system that is already strained and causing problems for the residents and taxpayers. Another reason why I'm concerned is my understanding that of this 10 acres, 5.5 acres are deemed to be wetlands. Your staff has has required the applicant to have DNR approval for the wetlands setback and the impact. As of this morning, Kathy Krametz from the DNR stated in writing, we have not received any application for this at all. And so, as a citizen taxpayer, I'm confused why we are approving rezoning of property when the DNR has not even approved the numerous fill that has to be dumped into the wetland. If you look at the most recent site plan, you will note that house number 5 is planned to be built right on top of the wetland, the mitigated wetland. You will also see that much of the roadway is to be constructed on top of the wetland. We have had numerous issues of standing water on our property. Until we unknowingly purchased a lot that contained 2 wetlands, and it was not disclosed to us. So, until you live on property that has a wetland, you just don't understand how it affects your lifestyle and your ability to use the property. Another concern that I have is at the April 11th Planning Commission meeting, it was my understanding that, and I think it was presented by staff, that there's a large culvert on the northern edge of this property that is going to take the water from the developed area and run northwest. Until very recently, I was not aware there is a culvert a smaller culvert, approximately 75 feet north of my property line. And this water, the water that comes from the east side of the road, there is a pool and there's nowhere for this water to go. And I'm very concerned that as you build up 9 homes in a mitigated wetland area, the water has to go somewhere, and it's going to go through this culvert and add to the standing water issues that I currently have. Part of the rationale to develop this property has been the demand for homes in southeast Mequon. And, my understanding is that these 4 lots have been available since 2005, and no one has purchased any of these lots to build a house on it. And it's just common sense, because the normal layperson is not going to buy a lot build a house in a swamp. That just isn't common sense. At the April 11th Planning Commission meeting, there was made mention that there is a complaint system for homeowners like me that have standing water issues. Well, when we contact the city, we're told, it looks like you have 2 wetlands on your property, there's nothing we can do. So, you know, the complaint system does not work for people in our situation. So many of the neighbors that surround this property and live on Oriole Lane are opposed to this project. I ask you to put the needs and the desires of the citizens who live on that street and the surrounding area and the taxpayers, to put the needs of us ahead of lining the profits of a lakeside development. I know they're a very good developer. I have no issues with them as a developer, but this is just not the right piece of property to develop 9 homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locatelli. Jamie Bach, 13346 Lakewood, supports and wishes to speak.
Hi, I'm Jamie Bach, and a newer Mequon resident. When my wife and I first moved to the area, we sought out properties and spent quite a bit of time, looking for a place to buy, and there was tough to find something similar to this, so I would support it that way, and I do feel there's a need for it. We ended up buying a single-family home and renovating it just due to lack of good inventory on the market. I feel this development would enhance the area and increase the surrounding property values. I'm familiar with lakeside development. They've created some of the finest projects in Mequon and the surrounding areas, so I've no doubt that they'll create a quality product here. Either way, it sounds like something will occur and get developed here, whether it be 4 to 6 single-family homes or this proposed development. If this proposed development does go forward, I feel it will improve the water management of Oriole Lane, because the development would be required to have detention ponds, whereas if 4 to 6 single-family homes were built, no water detention would be required and would add to the problem. Furthermore, if this development does not go through, 4 to 6 separate driveways could be entering and exiting on Oriole Lane, whereas with this development, there'd be only one single drive onto this proposed development. So I am in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Sarah Fleet is opposed and wishes to speak. 10905 North Oriole Lane.
Hi. We live at 10905 Oriole Lane. I live there with my husband and 2 kids. This is our 3rd spring on Oriole Lane. The reason we chose Mequon, is super convenient to the highway and the natural landscape. We look directly just south of the proposed development area. I have 4 concerns, the first of which is water. I think Lisa's photos show you exactly what our neighborhood looks like right now. The culvert that's in front of the house is relatively dry, and all the water sits on our grass. When we bought our house, we knew there was a small area of wetland underneath some big willow trees that we have. We bought it in the winter. It was all covered in snow. The first spring, we recognized the wetlands right in front of our house. The second spring, there's another wetland that's developed almost all along our property line. Our yard, which is one of the main reasons we bought the house, when we came to tour the house, they had pictures up on the television of their kids playing in the yard, running around using a slip and slide. You could play with without the slip and slide after it rains and slide right on through the grass. Our yard is almost constantly wet, and the kids can't play there. The main reason we bought that house is for the yard, and we have very limited use of it. We play on the driveway for the most part, Anyone who's driven by, I guarantee you, has seen my kids on our driveway. The more it rains, the more entertaining it gets. We find new puddles everywhere. Our neighbors to the south recently removed a bunch of trees. Some of that's the cause of the water. I get that. I understand. I support everything they've done. But even if you put something in place, you don't know what's coming down the road. Our sump pump runs almost constantly. Thank goodness we have that to keep our house dry. The space between our house and the neighbors behind us, Lisa showed you some pictures of, regularly turns into a pond with heavy rains. The water's the most worrisome issue for me. If you walk across the street from our house and look into the wetlands, right next to the person's house who's in front of us, the little cottage, is a pond. That thing doesn't dry up until the end of July. It starts off in the spring, and the water sits there. Those lots haven't been developed because no one in their right mind would put a house there. You have a forest of buckthorn holding some of that water in. You start to take out any of those trees and any of those plants, the water's only going to get worse. I worry about our house. I worry about other people falling into the same situation we did when we noticed all the water and where it comes from. The second thing is the sewer. If there's no capacity to build this number of houses, why are we even entertaining this idea? If what needs to be done is makes a sewer capacity, that certainly would need to be done first. The third thing I worry about, which no one else has mentioned, is traffic. 9 houses, 2 cars each house, that's 18 more cars. I don't think Oriole Lane is safe at the current time. I don't let my kids play out near the road. It's very difficult to ride their bikes anywhere. More houses, more cars. I'm not opposed to development. Wouldn't mind 4 additional driveways on that street. There are 4 lots there for a reason. The people plan to have the Planning Commission approve these lots to build single-family homes. Go right ahead. If that's, you can find someone who can build those houses for you and hope that they stay dry, I think it's a reasonable incentive. If you go around Oriole Lane down to Sunnydale, across the bridge, which is now another pond, and then come back up, there's this absolutely gorgeous walkway that goes from Sunnydale a little further past there. I think the community is Winding Hollow, and you walk all the way up there. Every morning, deer walk through my house, right through the path of our 4 houses and run across the street. I worry about what developing that area is going to do to the wildlife that lives there. I know some of this area won't be further developed, and I'm relieved about that, but this will be a tremendous impact on the natural landscape as well. Those are the 4 things that worry me. Please build the 4 houses, go right ahead, but please leave the zoning like it is, and don't let this development come and completely change our neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Fleet. David Mueller, 1737 Mequon Road, is in support and wishes to speak.
I live kitty corner to the proposed project, and I'm in favor of it. I understand people's problems with the water. I live it. And I really disagree with the situation with the current trees and the buckthorn. Without that being cleaned up, that's creating the problem, at least in my opinion. When we cleaned it up, our yard was clean, dried up. You know, we were able to see where water went. I believe it will improve our values because we can fix this water problem if we all work together. I think it's a positive, low-key addition to the neighborhood. We should be happy that a class act like Lakeside is willing to do this project. And I just think we should be careful what we wish for. You know, if this doesn't happen, and the 4 houses doesn't happen, what does? So I think it's a good thing. I'm in agreement with Lakeside. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Arlene Kurzer, 11104 Oriole Lane, is opposed and wishes to speak.
My name is Arlene Kurzer, and I live at 11104 North Oriole Lane. There is a swamp in my yard. The water is coming from the land Lakeside Development wants to build on. It is coming from the south of me. This swamp, which is to the south of my driveway, gets larger and larger every time it rains. It creates so much water that I can't walk on my grass without stepping in water up to my ankles. With all of this rain today, you'll probably have to wear boots up to your knees to walk in my yard. Besides this swamp of water, there's also a large stream of water coming again from the south that flows down to the east of my yard, past several properties to the north of me. The only ones that love this stream are the ducks that reside there. At the end of the third property, water flows into a culvert on the north side of the house at 11122 and goes under the road where it comes out across the street and makes another large stream of water going west. If you looked at it an hour ago, you would see that there's so much water that is almost at the top of the road. Because of what I just told you, I am concerned that if this project is approved, I will have even more water in my yard than I do now. When I moved into my house in 1976, I never had a drop of water anywhere on my land. We wouldn't have bought this house if the backyard was full of water. My kids could run and play all over the yard because it was dry. It was so dry that when I had a garden where the stream is now flowing, I had to bring a hose down to water my plants. If I had kids now, there is no way they could play in the yard. When I bought my house, there weren't any pockets of standing water in front of any yards on Oriole Lane, and it did not look like the swamps it does today. Oriole Lane was dry, I can assure you of that. The property in the middle of the block, where Lisa Lamb just told you about, at 10925 North Oriole Lane, was also dry. It wasn't until Sarah Chudnow was built in 2005 that all of this water suddenly appeared. Soon after Sarah Chudnow was built, the water started coming into my yard. I complained to Sarah Chudnow to do something back then, but no one listened and nothing was done. I always felt that the retention ponds, where they were put, and the way the engineers built Sarah Chudnow had something to do with the water problems that I now have. I read an email from Scott Humner from Lakeside Development that said the city would not approve any development if the engineers cannot prove that this development will either have no impact or improve the existing drainage on this land with detention ponds. My question right now is, will it really? Will drainage ponds be able to stop the water from flowing not only down to my property, but to any of the other properties you heard about today? If Lakeside Development is allowed to build, is there proof that even with retention ponds, the water problems will not get worse? I only hope that these questions are addressed by this council before this project is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kurzer. Next person is Bob Tenges, 2975 West Hidden Lake Road. His support and wishes to speak.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. I am in favor of this project. Again, my name is Bob Tenges. I live on 2975 West Hidden Lake Road. I was going to give you a long talk about the demand and the need for this kind of housing, but and I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think that's the issue here. But I will assure you that this type of project is going to be needed. It's needed now, and it's going to more of it's going to be needed in the future for people like me. And I, in fact, am a potential buyer for one of these properties in the Oriole Lane project. I just sold a house that's far too big for my wife and I, and we're ready to downsize, and we want to stay in Mequon because we love Mequon. And believe me, there are a lot of people that are around our age that are looking to do the same thing. Everybody doesn't move to Florida or to the east side of Milwaukee in a high-rise condo when they get ready to downsize in Mequon. Many people want to stay here, and I'm one of them. So this type of project is definitely needed. But I think the big issue here is not the need for the housing. I think the big issue here, when I listen to the people that are opposed to this project, is water. I mean, clearly the people that live on Oriole Lane have water problems. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. But what I do believe is that with the engineering that's been done for this proposed project, it's not only going to, it not only will not badly affect the people that already live there, I think it'll have a positive effect, because the engineering that's been done with the detention ponds and with all the work that's been put in is far more than ever been done by individual single-family homeowners. This project is going to take care of many of the water problems on that property, and I believe it will also positively affect some of the homeowners that already live there. And so, believe me, I wouldn't be interested in buying a home on that property if I thought my basement was going to be full of water all the time. So I know Lakeside Development. They built my first house in Mequon, and I've been here over 25 years. I think they're responsible people. They can't afford to make a mistake. It'll totally ruin their company if they do. And I know of at least 6 people that I know personally that are interested in moving into this project. So I very much support it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tenges. Janet Ain, 1948 West Hidden Reserve Court, is opposed and wishes to speak.
Well, for those of you who are looking for a place to live, we do have some homes available in our development, so you don't have to wait. Just thought I'd mention that. My name is Janet Ean, and I've been a resident of Hidden Reserve for 11 years, and I'm also the president of our homeowners association. Our development is composed of 54 homes, and we're just south of the Oriole Lane property that's in question. I've spoken before both the Common Council and the Planning Commission on several occasions in opposition to the development on this parcel. There have been concerns over the destruction of the natural wetlands, the bird and the wildlife habitat, and the removal of the last buffer zone between the intense development along Mequon and Port Washington roads. Of greater concern has been what additional drainage, water, and sewer issues will arise with the development of 9 homes set 30 feet apart on this parcel. That concern became increasingly alarming over the last month as we learned from staff and from the documentation throughout the Planning Commission that not only is this trunk of the sewer system already at capacity, and they question if it could even handle 9 homes, but that any modification to this system and its capacity is 2 to 5 years away, if at all. Residents are rightfully concerned about their properties and their investment, and there has been no additional information to allay these concerns. There's been much discussion around many issues relating to this proposed development. Boiling all of this down, I believe this is not about whether Mequon needs additional housing, it's not about additional tax revenue, it's not about the quality of the builder, or even the demand for this type of housing. The issue is simply whether this parcel of land should even be developed given the wetlands, the water, the sewer capacity problems, and the overwhelming resident opposition. Residents feel the risks to their property and their investment far outweigh any benefits, especially when the benefits are concentrated with the developer. The residents are the city, not the developers, and I respectfully ask the council to consider the short and the long-term risks to the surrounding residents if development occurs on this already fragile parcel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ain. Robert Kiekefer, 1903 West Hidden Reserve Court, is opposed and wishes to speak.
My name is Rob Kiekefer. I'm a resident in Hidden Reserve. I'm also the founder, past president of the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association. We restored 3,000 wetlands across the state of Wisconsin. We restored many wetlands across Ozaukee County, and we also restored all the wetlands in the Mequon Nature Preserve. And I'm just fascinated that this council is thinking about putting a development in the middle of a wetland when we already have a wetland across the street where people are living. I drive down Oriole Lane every day to get to work, and half the time it's underwater. And then I'm told that we have inadequate sewer capacity. And then I'm told we're going to take out the last buffer, the last wetland, where we've taken out a wetland right next door with the Jewish Community Center. We took out another wetland right next door to that with the Children's Hospital. And now we're going to take out the last wetland and make everything a wetland, because that's what will happen. You don't have the hydrology in that area to properly drain that area. You need adequate sewer capacity to take and displace the water. You don't have it. So plan on building it first before you think about taking out another wetland. We've spent all this time, all this money, we've had organizations across the state try to protect flooding, try to stop flooding, try to hold this water and contain and control the hydrology of the land, and now you want to go and put a housing development on top of a wetland that is just going to aggravate the problem. I'm adamantly opposed to this. I have not had a chance to call the Wisconsin DNR to see what their thoughts are about this, but I can't believe that they have any degree of confidence that this is a proper or adequate program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiekefer. Tanya Felton, 10655 North Woodcrest, supports and wishes to speak.
My name is Tanya Felton, and I'm a 16-year resident of Mequon. I reside at 10655 North Woodcrest Drive in the Pines subdivision. I come here this evening with no direct tie to the potential development on Oriole Lane. Rather, I'm here to share my perspective as a passionate, highly engaged community member of Mequon. Over the years, I have served as president of the Mequon-Thiensville Education Foundation, president of Area Council, and president of the Homestead High School PTSO. Like many of you, I have volunteered countless hours in Mequon because I love it here, and I plan to spend the rest of my life here. My husband and I have built 2 homes with Lakeside Development. The first one was in 2000, and the second in 2012. It's not everybody who would choose to build with the same builder twice. So, it speaks to the outstanding experience we had with them. As you likely know, they have been around for 30 years, which is a remarkable period of time in this industry. They are experts in the field, and they have proven that honesty, integrity, quality, hard work, experienced employees, and well-vetted subcontractors are the keys to success in this tough business. I understand that the 2 concerns voiced by current residents on Oriole Lane have to do with water issues and safety. I empathize with anyone who has these concerns. We all should. However, the Lakeside Planned Development Project would in fact improve their water issues. We can trust Lakeside when they say this. And as for safety, I've been surrounded by the building of 21 new homes during my tenure in the Pines, including one across the street from me right now. There has never been an accident or safety issue that I'm aware of during this time. Let's face it, every single street in Mequon was a construction site at one time. As for the rural nature of the area, we're not talking about a high-rise apartment complex. 9 high-end homes are not going to significantly increase traffic in this part of town. On the other hand, I can think of numerous reasons why the proposed development would be a good thing for Mequon. This type of development would only serve to enhance property values around the area. It would keep some families in our community who might otherwise leave, and it would provide an attractive option for new residents, something very beneficial to our school district because of the state funding formula for schools, which I know you all know about. Our school district has been experiencing declining enrollment for years, and this has presented major budget issues in this town. The increased tax revenue of nearly $7 million would be a great thing for our city's overall budget. And, as stated earlier, water management would actually be improved with a planned development. I hope you will support this project. We need to keep Mequon vibrant and economically strong for all of us to enjoy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Lynn Boomser, 1963 West Hidden Reserve Court, is opposed and wishes to speak.
Well, first of all, my name is Bomser, not Boomser. It only has one O, okay? I've got two hats here, guys, okay? One hat is I am the chair of Sarah Chudnow Community. I sit on not only that board, but I sit on the executive board of the Jewish Home, and I am a new member of the Jewish Home Foundation. Do you know what we have from Lakeside Development so far in terms of an offer, acceptance, anything? Zip, nothing, nada. There has been nothing. Why are you people wasting your time on a project like this when there's been no offer, no acceptance, nothing? I asked, when I heard about all the water problems, one of the issues that you passed tonight was to reduce the size of Sarah Chudnow. One of my concerns is the pond, the retention pond behind Sarah Chudnow, is now going to be owned by the development that they're proposing. That pond, I'm concerned. Sarah Chudnow takes great care to make sure that that pond is well cared for and environmentally sound. There is no track record to show. I know Lakeside Development has a great reputation, but there's no track record to show that once they develop this property, if they're allowed to do it, that they are going to maintain that, the owners are going to maintain that pond the way that it's been maintained by Sarah Chudnow. There's been a lot of talk tonight also, so I won't take a lot of your time, but I am also very concerned about the stress on the infrastructure, the sewer systems at capacity, the water systems at capacity. It's going to hamper our water pressure in our homes. The traffic, it will increase traffic. I don't understand. Now I'm wearing my Hidden Reserve. I live on Hidden Reserve hat here. I don't understand why you're even considering that project. There's another reason why. When I've seen this plot 50 times, okay, at board meetings. I don't understand. I asked one time, can I, as chair, go take a walk in there to see what it's like? Do you know what I was told? I was told it's swampland, Lynn. You don't want to go in there. You need to wear your wellies. Why are you even considering developing a plot that has so much water in it? And, again, now I'm going to put my Sarah Chudnow hat on. There's no negotiation that has occurred between the Jewish Home and Lakeside Development. So you're passing all these things, you're looking at all of this information, there's been no offer, there's been no acceptance, and I just don't understand, why you're wasting all this time. And taxpayer money, probably, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bomser. Lisa Fremming, 10701 North Lakeview Road, supports and wishes to speak.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me be here. Lisa Fremming. My handwriting must be bad because it's 10901 North Lakeview Road. I moved to Mequon about 6 years ago for the reason that a lot of people do. I came for the schools. I also was recruited by my mom and my brother, who both have lived here for many years. And I do love it, but I looked a long time to find a house that worked. And I found one that I loved from a location standpoint, but it still wasn't quite the one that I wanted. So I used Lakeside Development to build an addition, and I have never regretted a minute of it. People here tonight have spoken of the quality and the integrity, and I would echo that. They also built the house to blend in so perfectly that most of my neighbors say it looks like it's always been there. They built an addition that enhanced the building itself and had such sensitivity to a very wooded lot. In fact, I'm sure at some point they wanted to tear their hair out because I wanted to keep every single tree I could, including some that are right up next to the house, and they indulged me all the way with that. So as to demand, had I had options for something like that, I probably would have loved it. I came at the beginning of the time of my children and school, and I would love to stay here through my retirement, so maybe I'll end up in a place like that, because I wouldn't mind not cutting grass at one point. I've heard a lot from people here tonight about water, and I feel that. I don't have anything quite as fancy as a wetland. It was just wet when I bought it. And Lakeside worked with me throughout the construction to manage that wet in my yard and created much more dry space for me and my kids and my dogs. I was pretty tired of wiping off 12 paws all the time, and after Lakeside, I not wiping off those paws quite as much from the woods. So, nothing has ever been fixed by not doing anything. And I have great sympathy for people who moved here many years ago and have seen their dry yards turn into wet ones. But it's not going to go away without some work. I certainly have experienced firsthand the work that Lakeside did to fix my own miniature little wetland out there on Lakeview Road. And only engineering and only working on fixing it is going to fix it. Doing nothing is certainly not. So I would encourage you to do this as a new Mequon resident who hopes to be one forever. I think this is the kind of development we want. It attracts the kind of people we want, both at the beginning of starting their family and to keep them in Mequon after they might retire and go someplace else. It certainly is the sensitive kind of development that I think is appropriate for Mequon. I personally don't want big boxes. I don't need Target. I don't need another Home Depot. I need houses for people like us who want to move here and make this community as good as it has been and better for a long time. So I firmly endorse the integrity and the quality of the work that Lakeside does, and I encourage you to think again that nothing ever gets fixed by doing nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Harriet Resnick, 1950 West Hidden Reserve Court, is opposed and does not wish to speak. Ira Kaufman, 1961 West Hidden Reserve Court, is opposed and does not wish to speak. Marvin and Marlene, I'm sorry, it's just too faint. Lawasser. 2043 West Hidden Reserve Court are opposed and do not wish to speak. John Graham, 9627 West Highland Road, is in support and wishes to speak.
Good evening. I'm here this evening not as a developer. I am a developer. I've been in front of this group in years gone by and recently. I'm here tonight as a resident for the last 45 years or so in Mequon, married to a girl that was born and raised in Mequon. We love this city. I agree with the lady that just left the podium that nothing good happens by doing nothing. So it's important to, as a community to look at these developments. I've said this before in front of another group. We have hired a very high-quality staff of planners and engineers. We have a Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin that will watch out for the wetland areas and will make sure that things that may be approved at this body may not be approved by the Department of Natural Resources if they think there are wetlands at risk. So as we look at this situation, and everybody that comes up here has a personal agenda. I have no personal agenda. I live in West Mequon. I moved to West Mequon because I didn't want any neighbors too close, and that's where I've stayed for the last 35 years. So I hear people talking about too much traffic. We're talking about 9 cars on a road that has a whole lot more traffic than 9 cars. We've talked about housing stock, and I hear about diversity of housing stock in our various conversations throughout the course of the years in Mequon. We need diversity. We need a place to go for folks like myself. I happen to like my big yard, and I'm going to keep it as long as I can walk around it. And when I don't want it, I would like to be able to move to a place that is managed, that has been thoughtfully developed by people that are experts in their field. So I am in favor of this project. I want to make it clear, the last time I stood up here, I had some comments made in the local newspapers that I'm friends with the developer. Yes, I'm friends with Lakeside Development. Yes, I am in the real estate business, and I'm here to speak in favor of what's good for Mequon, good for the tax base, good for the school system, and let's let our professionals decide and work with the state agencies to make sure that this development and every other development meets the standards that are established, not just here, but throughout the state. So thank you very much for your time. I'm in favor of this project, encourage it, and I once again will say, as I've said before, which is not a very popular thing, so many times that people complain and complain and complain about developments. And as I stood here a couple of years ago, I was turned down and denied by a project and deferred and delayed. We ran out of time. The guy that was against the project bought the land. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Brian Stark, 10579 River Lake, supports and wishes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Brian Stark, and I've lived in Mequon for about 30 years. My kids are grown up and they're on their own, at least today. And we're getting to the point where we're looking for alternative housing. Our house doesn't fit our lifestyle anymore. And as a result of that, I stopped and spoke to Lakeside. I've known these people for about 15 years and had nothing but good feelings about them. I stopped and spoke about what options might be available. And this project came up, and we talked about it, and I feel the need for housing that fits an aging demographic to live the lifestyle that we want to live, and it fits the way we do live. And if we don't find it in Mequon as time goes on, I think I'm speaking for more than me, ultimately you end up leaving, and that would be a shame because Mequon's a great place. Now, everything's been said. I understand that there are certainly water concerns, and in fact, when this was talked about, Lakeside told me about it, and they said that this project would have all of the appropriate engineering to assure the residents and the people who bought, if it goes, some of these properties, that water would not be a problem. And also brought up the fact, and we talked about if these properties were developed individually, that would not happen. But this project couldn't go without the appropriate engineering to assure everyone that water would not be a problem. And from my relationships with them over the past 15 years, everything they've ever told me, they've done. And so I believe that to be the case. And as a result, I am in favor of this project, and I think Mequon needs projects like this and more for an aging demographic. And so I hope it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Judy Smith, 9624 West North Lamplighter Lane, supports and wishes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Judy Smith, and I have lived in Mequon since 1970. I currently live in the Rangeline Valley. And in 2003, we contracted Lakeside Development to add an addition onto our house, which was also done seamlessly. People think that it's original to the house, and it's not. Lakeside has been an asset to our city for a long time. You can see their quality builds as you drive up and down Port Washington Road and office buildings near Mequon Road, as well as the two lovely subdivisions that they've already developed. So they have experience in this area. This land we are discussing tonight is already zoned for residential use. Why would the city not want to maximize their taxable base by allowing 9 homes to be built on this land instead of 4? There are 2 lakeside-built homes to the east of my house, and some more up on the hill on Rangeline Road, which were built since we've lived there. There has been no impact from them on our property. The homes, in fact, have added value to our neighborhood because they enhance the quality of the area. Lakeside development has shown itself to be a great asset for our community. They care about our city. They add value to our city. I encourage you to vote yes in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Tom Zabjak, 11845 Sand Hill, supports. Surprise, surprise.
Yes, I do. I'm going to be wearing 2 hats here. And I don't want to be, I want to be forthcoming and say that I'm going to be speaking on behalf of a Mequon business person, president of Lakeside Development, as opposed to a resident, because I really feel that this is the right thing for the city. I think after most of the people spoke in favor of the project, they really explained why it would benefit the current residents. And it's very true. I've talked with Jack and Kim and James. He's not here, James Keegan. But clearly, the engineering of this project will enhance the water storm management of the area. And I also would like to clear up, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody that spoke opposed to the project, but there's so many unfound comments, like the last one, Mrs. Boozer, or I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, but you know, she said that there's 0. I mean, do you think I would have spent all the money that I've spent and all the time without having some sort of agreement with Sarah Chudnow with respect to this purchase of the property? I have a letter of intent, and it's clear the terms of the letter of intent. Rob Irwin, who is their attorney, I'm sure is watching this on YouTube tonight, and he's going to give me a call. Hopefully this thing will be approved and we'll consummate an offered purchase. But I mean, some of the comments, I mean, it's ludicrous to think that after we've been in business all these years that we would do things that, you know, there's comments made about, you know, why would you build in a swamp? I mean, I can go through a litany of stages that we went to before we got to this particular stage. And she's absolutely right. I don't want to waste your time. I'm a resident of Mequon. I'm paying your, I don't even know if you get salaries, but, you know, why should I want to waste your time unless we feel that we have a really viable project here that is going to be very successful. I mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting in April that we've done, and I think a few other people referenced that, some very successful projects. We did Stone Fields. I mean, it's a huge success. And the preserve, you know, we had a few bumps because of the economy. We got through it. It's finished. And I think it's something we're proud of. But I took a few notes, and I just really want to address, I don't want to take too much time, but, you know, Arlene Kurzer, and the day we had the Planning Commission meeting, which I think it was April 11th, that day I met with her because I had a previous conversation with respect to a water problem that she had in her backyard. And I went to her house and I looked at, you know, walked on her property with her, and there definitely was water in her backyard. And I said, Arlene, there's a swale there. And that's, you know, the water doesn't go uphill. And so I said I would be willing to come out and bring an excavator with us and determine what we could do. And I said maybe we could even put a drain tile in there to remedy the problem. So anyway, we went to the Planning Commission meeting that night. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Then Arlene and I drove in my car down the street to Mrs. Lamb's house. And we looked at that. And I looked at it and said, hey, it looks like a pond was created in front of her house. And I just found out today, yes, it was, indeed. It wasn't, because she said, yeah, we created a pond in there to create waterfall. Well, when I first looked at it, I thought it was a drainage issue. Well, it's not a drainage issue. And also, Mrs. Lamb also pointed out today that the water in the culvert that's in the middle of Oriole Lane, and by the way, Oriole Lane goes like this, and our project would be here. Mrs. Lamb's over here. Again, water doesn't go uphill. She's purported that the water is going from, engineering says that the water goes from west, or east to west. Isn't that correct, Jack? Mrs. Lamb saying it's going from west to east. Well, if it's going from west to east, and she lives on the west side of the road, why would that cause water on her property? And not only that, her property's higher than where the culvert is. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I mean, if you really look at this, so many of these things are unfactual. So anyway, getting back to my point, we drove to Mrs. Lamb's house, and I could see there's water sitting there. And it clearly is not a result from this project. And this project will not, and I can't say that this project, when we do our engineering, is going to mitigate any of Mrs. Lamb's problem because hers is higher. I can't say that, but I can guarantee you it's not going to cause any more of a water issue. The other issue that, I forget the gentleman's name here, I wrote it down, excuse me. Mr. Locatelli, he said that there's water on his property. He bought his property in the winter, in I think he said February, and it was a very harsh winter, and he was unaware that there were any wetlands in his property when he bought it. I mean, that's absurd. No realtor would sell anybody a piece of property. I mean, you have to disclose wetlands. It's right in the offer to purchase. And also, even in the, I forget what they call it. I'm a licensed realtor. I don't practice real estate, but it's a property condition report. There's an area in the property condition report that you have to state if there's a wetland or a floodplain in your area. And you can't transfer real estate without that stuff. So either he didn't read it or somebody didn't disclose it, which I would be really surprised that any realtor would put together a real estate contract without disclosing that, because there's huge penalties. You lose your license for that. So let's see. Also, what I'd like to bring up, somebody brought up, how silly are we to want to develop land in a swamp? Well, I said earlier, we've done this before. I live in the preserve, which is off the Glen Oaks. And when we first looked at that property, people said, there's a swamp back there. Yeah, there was a huge wetland. And when we put that subdivision together, there's 17 lots in there, we did all of our engineering. And it's interesting, before this meeting, I went home, and we had a lot of rain today, as you know. And I looked at my backyard, and I had no sitting water, and I have the wetland right behind my house. I have a pond to the west of my house. The pond was filled up. It wasn't overflowing. There was water in all the ditches, and it was working the way it's supposed to do. I think this is an example of mitigating water in having storm water management. I mean, that's what it's all about. But getting back to the comment that, we really haven't done our work, and we haven't talked to somebody said that they talked to the DNR and they have never heard from us. I mean, come on. Would we go this far? That's one of the very first things I did. The first thing we did was this is going back almost 2 years ago. We evaluated the wetland. We met with the DNR. I was at the DNR's office. And when you work with the DNR, there's two permits. One's called a general permit, and then there's another permit, and this permit is to fill the wetland. Because we were minimally filling the wetland, and I have a letter, I think Jack and Kim have a letter from the DNR saying that because of the minimal amount of wetland we're filling, that will just require a general permit. Now, I didn't go and get the permit yet, because why would I pay all that money for all the engineering and everything if you folks are going to say, no, we don't want this? That would be silly. So anyway, after I met with the DNR, I met with the Army Corps of Engineers, because the Army Corps of Engineers, they have to approve this as well. This is well over a year ago. After we did this, I met with staff, and we developed 3 or 4 yield plans. And what a yield plan is, you have to determine if there are sufficient lots for the current zoning to be built on the property in order to do a conservation subdivision. And we satisfied that by our staff, who, by the way, do an excellent job. Then we had the property delineated, because initially we had a delineation for the wetlands that was provided by the county, but we couldn't go by that because it was more than 10 years old. So we hired a company to go out there and put down about 500 or 600 little flags to see where the wetland was. Then after that, we had it resurveyed to make sure the wetlands were in the proper location. Then after that, we had to have the property resurveyed, to make sure that we knew where all the boundaries were. And then we went to the Planning Commission, and somebody mentioned that, our project was tabled in February because the issue came up with trees. There were some specimen trees. There's certain kind of trees that you can't cut down with a certain size and so forth. So I met with Ken Baker, who is our arborist, and Ken and I, great guy, we walked the property and we flagged all the trees. Well, then I had to have the thing resurveyed again, because we had to find out where the trees were in reference to the boundaries. So we did that, and then they marked all the trees, and I think that is the copy that you have in front of you. Oh, there it is. The red dots are the specimen trees. The other dots are specimen trees that Ken felt that we could remove because they were kind of shabby. So then I went back, because some of the trees were in the roadway and where some of the houses were going, we had to shift the road and redesign the subdivision. So as a result, we're not removing any of the trees. The trees that Ken said we should keep, plus the trees that we don't have to keep. So they're all going to stay there. Actually, some of them should probably be cut down. But somebody mentioned that we're filling in all the wetlands. There's one house there, and I can't see the numbers quite well, but I think it's number 5. Yeah. Number 5 is the only house that there's some wetland mitigation. All the other homes are in the upland. So if anybody's purporting that we're building houses in a swamp, obviously they didn't look at this information. And why would we build a house in a swamp? Secondly, we ran this by the DNR, and if we didn't think we'd get approval from the DNR, we wouldn't be going this far. So anyway, what else do I have to say? This, staff supports our project, marketing supports the project, and my last comment. I don't know where it is. But my last comment is, what I've heard from most of the people that oppose it is, it's a great development, but it shouldn't be here. Lakeside's great, but you should build somewhere else. And it's always somewhere else. And somebody said they went and they found 8 properties, 10 acres or more, where we could do a PUD. You need 10 acres for a PUD. And I guarantee you, none of them are in the sewer and water system. And all of the people that we're dealing with, they want to be on municipal services. And that's why there's so many lots on the west side, 5-acre lots, that they're just sitting there. And people are not interested in large rural lots anymore. Not everyone. So that's it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Zajac. And thank you, everyone, for coming out and expressing your opinion and listening to everybody else.
Move to close the public hearings?
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearings. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Move to
Public
suspend the
hearings.
rules and take up these two items right away rather than going through the stuff that comes ahead of.
We have a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Take up ordinances 1468 and 1467. Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Worth,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Adams,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
That's unanimous. And if you don't mind, we'll take up 1467 first.
Well, I'll move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve.
Was that the?
Discussion. Alderman Hawkins.
First of all, I don't think anybody here has any question about the quality of lakeside development. I appreciate all the folks who did come specifically to make that point. I think it's a good point. People who have firsthand experience working with Lakeside and the quality and integrity of that firm I agree with them. I've observed and approved developments, including one that's currently going up in Mequon Road that we have high hopes are going to turn out to be as good as past developments that they have worked on. There have been a couple of points that are brought up. I think Mr. Zabchek, and I had a nice conversation with him on the phone the other day, but he pointed out that the specimen tree issue is off the table because our forester, and he agreed that all 22 of the specimen trees will be preserved. They're going to be flagged off, and so that's not an issue. Where I've had a couple of issues begin with their report, the wetland delineation report, prepared by TRC, Environmental Corporation. And the first item, which I don't think we're going to be able to deal with tonight, has to do with their table of contents. It's going to sound odd, but the table of contents references pages 1 through 9, including Appendix A, Figure 1, but then there's nothing after that that shows up in our packet. I would have preferred to have seen Figure 2, Figure 3, Figure 8, Appendix B, Appendix C, Appendix D, and Appendix E, which include wetland delineation map and wetland determination data forms. That's not included in our packet. So why that was overlooked, I really don't know, but it's too bad. Second, in that report, Section 3.0, regulatory definitions, your consulting firm declares that the Army Corps of Engineers had regulatory authority, but second of all, later on, that in their conclusion on page 6.0, A, it's the wetlands are over 53% of the property in question, and B, the final conclusion, TRC recommends a coordination with the Army Corps and the WDNR be conducted prior to implementing any activity that is in near proximity or is within wetlands or waterways to determine if a permit would be needed. Now, in my conversation with Mr. Zabchek, he said, look, we didn't want to pay the money to go for that permit unless we're going to get allowed to go forward. But in Section 5 of the results of the, and I'm going to get back to that comment, but Section 5 results of the study used a very strange word that I had to look up, palestrine, referring to the land in question. My definition, or my dictionary didn't have, and it's a Webster's Collegiate, so it's a pretty good dictionary, but it says there was a couple of other words. One was palatal, which is marshy, and then pollution, which refers to malaria. And I don't think there's going to be any malaria here, but that was in my dictionary. So I did go to the internet, and palastrine refers to wetlands that are permanently saturated or swamped or flooded, such as swamps and marshes. That is the report that your TRC Environmental Corporation prepared. Again, they recommended that the DNR be consulted. Our own packet introduction in the background, the very end of the background section says that, specimen trees were dealt with, but you needed a resolution from the Common Council regarding the wetlands condition, and I'm quoting from our staff, subject to approval by the Department of Natural Resources. It's been reported tonight, and we received emails and copies of emails from Ms. Kramaz of the KRAMASC from the Wisconsin DNR, who said we have not received any application for this at all, referring to, and this is the initial email was from Mr. Locatelli to the woman from the DNR. Now that may go back to Mr. Zabchek's comment to me on the phone that they didn't want to go forward with a formal application to the DNR because they've already invested certain amount, tens of thousands of dollars, which I appreciate. Also, he made the comment that they don't own the property. So I don't know if we've resolved any issues between Sarah, comments about Sarah Chudnow ownership and agreements or letters of intent that might have been back and forth between Lakeside and Sarah Chudnow. I really don't know. But this question about the DNR approval that our own staff has said is before us, we've not received that approval. So in conclusion, I hope we don't see the 4 homes. Now, you may ultimately have the right to build the 4 homes. Okay, we're not going to be voting on any of that. You could have the right to do that. I just hope you never do. Whether the question is going to be, could you come up with 9 condo units? I still think we have, with our own engineering department and public works, the issue of the sewer capacity in the East Trunk, and whether or not that is at full capacity. I know that we're going to be doing engineering studies to address that specifically. I would hope that you would have the patience to wait until that study is complete and that we do complete whatever work needs to be done on East Trunk. And then I'd be happy to look at this again, and again, I hope you have the patience and whoever else is involved to have the patience to see that, A, the DNR comes through with its approval, and B, that the city and this Common Council can get work completed on the East Trunk. So I'm going to be voting no tonight.
Mayor?
Can I go to staff here for a second, and can you address the timing issue with DNR applications and the capacity of the sewer?
Sure.
Thank you.
A number of the questions and concerns relate to engineering, so I see Kristen, Director of Public Works, and City Engineer coming up to assist us. In terms of the wetland issue, I think there's a little bit of confusion. What was initially of concern for staff when we started reviewing the proposal, of course, was to receive the wetland delineation, but the fact that there was an indication that buildings were proposed within the required wetland setback of 50 feet and that there could be deviations to that 50-foot setback from the wetland so long as other measures were met. That was a little bit different than some of the conversations we've had with the DNR in the past, and so the reference to Planning Commission pausing over environmental concerns about the wetland related specifically to the ability to deviate from that setback, and if so, what other measures needed to take place. In terms of the overall wetland complex and final approval of fill related to the development, it's very normal and customary at this point in the process to condition our rezoning approvals subject to DNR approval of these matters for the exact matters that were mentioned by the developer. We align what are necessary and typical conditions of approval with what is normal in the development approval process. And typically, we're not going to find developers, land developers, moving forward that far in the process until there is some understanding that they would have the ability to move forward with this concept plan should they be able to then meet all of those technical standards. So that's the clarification on the wetland issue.
With respect to the sanitary sewer, as you're all aware, we've obviously been dealing with the East Trunk sewer issue where we have existing capacity issues, especially in wet weather events. What we've recommended as a condition of the rezoning is if there is a consideration of a density in excess of what is currently allowed by zoning, which is the 4 homes, that the effluent discharging to the sewer would be restricted to a rate equal to or less than that 4 homes. So what we're suggesting is essentially they would have on-site accommodations to ensure that they would have no further impact on the sanitary sewer than the 4 homes that are currently allowed until such time that the East Trunk sewer project is built, and then we would have the additional capacity for the additional flow.
Some follow-up questions. What do you mean by on-site? So
they could have a storage tank, they could have, depending on topography, if they needed a grinder pump or a lift station internal to their site, they would just reduce the pumping and discharge to a rate that would be equal to that of a typical 4-home development instead of the 9 that may be permitted by zoning.
Alderman Worth. Comments, or I don't want to cut off questions if
No, I
there
think
were.
you answered the question, right?
Well, to start with Alderman Hawkins' comments about the DNR, to expect a developer to go and spend all of the money for all of the various approvals before they even know whether a community is going to approve the development, we've never done that in the city. It would be kind of absurd. This developer, I don't know what his number is, but I'm sure he spent $75,000 to $100,000 to get to this point tonight. The ordinance provides he has to get all those approvals before the ordinance goes into effect. So those issues are covered. And I think we have to take a step back. This happens in some form or fashion with almost every development that, at least in my time on the council, that ever came before us. There are always concerns, very legitimate concerns, but always concerns. It's our job to apply a fair and rational set of rules when we're voting on these. If we make our decisions based on who opposes or how many people show up, we might as well throw out all our rules and any pretense in believing in property rights. Under that scenario, we've put ourselves above the law and decided we're the law. I mean, we have to have a fair set of rules that we apply consistently. You know, we have to look at, does it meet the base zoning requirements? It wouldn't have gotten here if it didn't. Are there any changes or variances? How do those affect the property and the surrounding areas? And the most important one, will the development cause a problem? Now, the problem that we hear, and I think it's a very legitimate one, is water, the drainage issue. I mean, the sewage issue, there's a resolution for the sewage issue that would be no different than all sorts of places in Mequon. I mean, on the west side, we all have on-site sewage systems. Here they're saying, put part of it on-site, put part of it in the sewage system. You're not taxing the sewage system because we're putting into the sewage system what's already approved for the sewage system. So they're going to have a septic system of some sort to take care of this at a big cost to the developer. His decision ought to be whether he wants to do that. So let's go back to the water. In my time that I was on the council, we heard in dozens of developments significant problems of water. Why? Because We live in a community with significant water problems. We live in a flat clay community that has poor drainage, crummy soil, and often not very good drainage ways. But in every single instance, when we've heard those, when the development actually occurred, the fears have not been realized. In every or almost every instance, the neighborhood's problem got better because of the development. Now, I'm not an engineer. I don't know the first thing about drainage and the ways to fix those. But we do hire drainage experts. We pay a lot of money for them. We also require then the developer to hire a drainage expert and require him to pay a lot of money for him. And then the DNR and the Corps of Engineers also require him to spend a lot of money to give us plans that work, and only then does he get his approval. You know, and we need to repeat that if we turn this down and he builds the 4 homes, the neighborhood's going to be, or he or anybody else builds those 4 homes, the neighborhood's going to be far worse off. This is a benefit to this neighborhood. And it's a benefit that's actually fewer homes than what the zoning, you know, this is 11 or 12 acres for 9 homes in a 1 acre zoning area. I mean, I think it's 1 acre, right?
1 acre.
So, I mean, I have not heard one fact or science-based reason that shows that this will exacerbate a problem. I've heard a lot of legitimately concerned people who have legitimate issues. Some people have legitimate issues in their property. But I've yet to see anyone who raised the issue and given us anything more than conjecture. Now, that should not be the reason we make decisions in this body. And here's the test I have. If this was in my district, I would vote for it. I know I would have angry people, but I've done it before. But it's the responsible and fair thing to do for the applicant and for the people who own the property who are selling it to the applicant. It's fair based on the rules we established. And if we don't like the rules and the zoning and how we do things, change the rules. Don't pull the rug out when somebody's giving you a development that meets the requirements and spent a lot of money coming to us with a development that meets the requirement. The process is just unfair. This is not the time to say no to a developer.
Alderman Meyer.
Well, Alderman Worth makes some valid points, but we're not changing the rules on the developer. The developer has the right to build 4 lots on that property. The developer and the person who's selling the property and some other individuals are asking us to change what the zoning is and what is allowable on that area. So they are asking to change the rules. We are not changing the rules on them at this point. They have put a lot of money, time, and effort into it, and I can definitely appreciate that. I can definitely appreciate the individuals that have come forward and express the fine buildings that Lakeside Development does, and there's no question in that. But it's not about the developer. It's not about the people who had their homes built by the developer. It does have a lot to do with the fact of the matter that if we are going to allow the changes to the property that is there, and no, not every development that we've had beforehand has been better off than it was in the past. I can go from personal instance in the fact that the properties across the street from me, where there was a farmer's field, where it retained all the water inside of there. Subsequently, now the water is not, is not retained inside of there, and we do have a retention pond that's over across the street that doesn't hold water. And I've had our engineer over there a number of times, not the current one, the past one, a number of times coming over to take a look at it and said, yep, that was wrong. So the water now off of that development comes down through the middle of where the properties are, and in heavy rains comes across the ditch and comes through my property. So that is one instance, and that property's been there for quite a while, but that's one instance where it did not work, and I'm sure there's some other ones where it didn't. But I'm sure there's a lot of them that it didn't work. The developer came back and took care of it too. But this is, but as a broad stroke in saying that, I think that's incorrect. So the question on my part is the fact of that, are we denying the developer to build something there? And we're not. But they're asking us to increase that area over there that And I'm not an engineer either. They're telling us that it's going to be better than it is currently now. I'm not 100% sure on that. And I'm really kind of up in the air at this point which way I'm going to go on this.
Kim, correct me, they did a yield plan for 9 lots, so they could build 9 lots, 1 acre lots on
That
this.
is the current.
Yeah, it's currently platted for 4, but they could get 9 lots, but they don't want to do that. They want the planned unit development. So what we're actually voting on here tonight is to allow the planned unit development to go forward instead of the traditional 1 acre subdivision.
Could-
Alderman Bouquet.
I'd like to see that.
I want to clarify that we are not voting this evening to approve this plan. We are voting to allow for a plan to come forward as a planned unit development, which would be reviewed and ultimately approved by the Plan Commission. And that would only occur after getting the DNR approvals and that sort of thing. Is that accurate?
That's correct. The next step in the process would be a plat.
Okay. So what we're being asked to do is make a decision as to whether or not keeping the land zoned as it is now, which could allow for up to 9 building sites, without having a development approval and without having engineering done, or to allow for a planned unit development that would cluster those building sites, keeping specimen trees and engineering to address the water issues. I've lived in this community for 50 years, and I've been very familiar with this particular part of the city, knowing that there is absolutely no grade in that area. It's flat. And there are areas that have had standing water for just about those 50 years. Every time it rains, there's standing water. The only way it will be fixed in this instance would be if there is a development sufficiently large to engineer corrections and to allow for the retention of water and the slow drainage. So I'm inclined to support this proposal. I think that it will address issues that are not now addressed.
I had one more question or clarification with staff. The sewer capacity issues that are talked about, those are during wet weather events where infiltration and influx of clean rainwater gets into the sewer system, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That typically happens with sewers that are constructed of older materials, clay mains,
Correct.
cast iron.
Yes, correct. We would assume that this new system would be constructed with plastic pipe that would be
all
tight
PVC that's sealed, so
and not release any additional INA.
That's where my hang up, even requiring them to do the inflow rate equivalent to 4 homes is almost a non-issue, because you've got tens of thousands of gallons, millions of gallons pouring into the sewer system of rainwater on nights like tonight that have nothing to do with the sewage of a number of houses on the system. It's probably many, many times the actual flow rate of sewage, is it not? I mean, we're seeing spikes that are like
Correct.
5-6 times
Yes.
normal flow rates. So if you add 9 houses, if you add 90 houses, it's not going to do anything to exacerbate the problems you experience on a night like tonight, unless everyone flushes their toilets all at once, maybe. I think the sewer capacity issue is a total non-issue. I see the developer's reworked his plan to take care of all the specimen trees on site. That's rather admirable. Usually they just elect to pay the fee and cut them down and try to move forward with that. I think if you look at the yield plan for the 9 single-family homes on 1 acres, if they were to move forward with that, it's absolute disaster for this area. The way to best mitigate the problems of this area, if they're going to develop something, is to do the cluster development, make it one development with all the stormwater management engineered in the right way from the get-go. If you have 9 single-family homes, none of that will happen. I think you really got to, it's another one where you got to be careful what you wish for, and I think I'm going to support it.
I think when you look at a project like this, when you have the concerns that have come forward, you look to the quality and the integrity of the developer. I'm familiar with Lakeside Development. I've seen their subdivisions go up for years. I've seen their homes. I've seen the quality of their buildings. And they take, in my opinion, meticulous care to make sure things are done right. There's no doubt that Tom Zabchak's sitting in the audience today listening to the concerns with water. It's all in public record. It's all noted. Everybody here is concerned with water. His responsibility in building this parcel, if it does get approved tonight, is to make sure that this project doesn't increase the issues that are going on already. And if possible, I've asked this when Lumen Christie came forward, if there's anything you can do to dig a pond a little bit deeper and there's not a huge investment that's in something like that, when and if there is the opportunity to come forward with a final plat, that would be the time to include a few of those things to try to mitigate some of the neighbors' concerns, allow for some of that water runoff to get taken care of and solved if possible. I agree with Alderman Pouquet that a larger development like this is one of the things that could mitigate that issue. My concerns, I've got bullet and starred points, are the sewer issues. Alderman Nurbin addressed that, and I agree with his point on that. I don't think there's going to be a big difference between 4 and 9 homes on that. The runoff issue, I'm familiar with the runoff issue. My family had a building north of Mequon Road. It had runoff issues. People backfilled to the west of them, and where they didn't have wetlands, they now have wetlands. But the city has improved significantly over time since my grandfather had that building when I was a kid. And this is being watched. We're looking at this closely. We know the concern. City staff is taking time to do diligence to make sure that the runoff issues are taken care of. And as a condition, one woman came forward and she asked, why are we doing all this? Well, the DNR, as a condition of approval, the DNR approval is required. Otherwise, this just doesn't happen. If it can't be approved and the DNR won't approve it, the DNR is pretty stubborn when it comes to water and runoff issues. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. The developer is going to get their answer when it goes forward to DNR. I've been on the fence on this one. I've listened to your concerns, and I'll continue listening to my council members. I'm still not completely decided on my vote at this point, but I'm inclined to vote in support of this. I think they can mitigate some of the ongoing issues that have been going on, and I think the developer will take efforts to do so.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. I paid particular attention tonight to what the homeowners in the area said, because what the homeowners in the area said gives more weight to what I believe, because they live there. And this argument about which way the water flows, one says it flows north, one says it flows south, one says it flows east, one says it flows west. But they did have some nice videos onto exactly which way the water is flowing, if it's flowing at all in this flat area. When I look at this, it's a flat area, it's a swampy area. The only way you can build homes is to raise them up, so the water's got to go somewhere else. If it continues to be a flat area, it's going to go to the neighbor's property. It's just as simple as that. That's gravity. That's the way it goes. I am always concerned about the East Trunk sewer system. Alderman Urban says maybe 4 to 9 homes won't affect it. Maybe they won't affect it that much. But I have residents who live along South Lakeshore Drive who get sewage in their basement again and again and again, and one time would be too much for me. I had my home flooded because the city didn't inspect when Phil went in. But it was rainwater because I'm on septic system. So I didn't get sewage in my basement, but it was disgusting as it was. So I give a little more emphasis to what the residents say, and I understand that, and I empathize with them, because if their homes gets flooded, that's their homes, that's their livelihood, that's where they live, that's where their children are. And if something does go wrong with it, it says, oh, nothing good happens by doing nothing. Well, some really bad things can happen if this project isn't done properly, and the DNR hasn't even looked at it yet. And the Army Corps of Engineers hasn't looked at it yet. And we've seen projects where the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers approved them, like Concordia, for example, and the city can't do anything about that. And the city is not going to do anything about it if there are problems, because it's not going to be the city's problem anymore. When it gets to court, it's going to say, well, it's not our fault. The Army Corps of Engineers and the DNR approved it. So what happens to the residents? So I've got a lot of concerns about this. And it is, I think there should be, they should be tabled and looked at until some of these things come back. I'm not going to vote for this. Maybe Lakeside Development's a great company. I don't have any experience with them. I'm sure their reputation's great. But when you build a home, you build it on a firm foundation. I believe if you build a home on a swampland, it doesn't matter how great the home is. Just like those homes on Lake Michigan's bluff, they can be great, solid homes, but if the bluff is unstable, they're going into the lake. So I don't agree with nothing good happens if you do nothing. In the past, when Sarah Chudnow was built, they said now they're getting more water. There's probably a cause and effect there. I don't believe Mequon should go down as a city that says, well, you know, if you buy the property, let the buyer beware. That's not going to bring people to Mequon to build homes if it's let the buyer beware. So I'm adamantly opposed to this project until all the rest of the data comes in. And if Kathy Crammond said she wasn't contacted, I'm sure she wasn't contacted, because I've been in contact with Kathy Crammond for the last 16 years working on projects. So I will vote against this as it stands. Thank you.
Yeah, finally, you know, when we approved Sarah Chudnow a while back, and, you know, one of the things that was contentious also, pretty contentious in that area for it, you know, and one of the things that we did really kind of promise at the time, there wouldn't be any, you know, any increasing in density, there wouldn't be any effect, you know, on the surrounding residents. And it seems that there has been effect for the surrounding residents with the, you know, the increase in water inside of that area for them. Also the fact that, you know, we kind of made sure that when we were talking to the residents around that area, that there wouldn't be any, you know, increase in adverse effect on their property at the time, and we did have some pretty heavy density inside of that project for it when we first approved it. It's another issue that kind of bothers me a little bit with the fact of that now selling off some of that property. And if that is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or that, but without the additional Sarah Chudnow property, they are allowed to build what?
7.5 acres.
4 properties?
There's 7.5 gross acres then, because there's swapping of land. But you need 10 acres to apply for a residential planned unit development.
No, I understand that, but without the PUD, if they didn't have that, then they would be allowed to build how many homes?
Well, the overall site acreage would be 7.5, but we'd have to do another yield plan.
Alderman Adams.
That's really the first question that I think we had moved it up, but we've gotten caught in the other issue is, are we willing to let Sarah Chudnow let go of the open land? And I'm just curious, is this something that Sarah Chudnow requested? Shouldn't that come from the entity, the institution?
There is an application by Sarah Chudnow, which is the other ordinance that coexists with this one. So
So
They-
that
they
did
formally
come-
applied.
Okay, it was Sarah Chudnow that applied. I was just curious from something I had heard earlier. We've watched over this Oriole Lane neighborhood for years. We've had to, because it's right against an area that's been blossoming with growth to the east. And I know when Sarah Chudnow came in, that open space was important, and that was part of the deal we made with them. And in this case, it's being pointed out that's more green space than like Newcastle had, but it's a totally different situation. Newcastle's surrounded by expressway and a very busy roads of Highland and Port Washington. This is different. This is backed up against homes, Sarah Chudnow, and I'm not comfortable just doing away with the green space that we agreed to when they were built. That makes me, like I said, uncomfortable. And the yield plan, I know it would totally change without that, and I'd like to see that yield plan without that extra space. But the one that we have before us, I know it's a judgment call, and staff has to make it if it makes sense. I don't think the yield plan they have, which once again shows what it's going to be like if you parcel this into acres and the access point, I don't think this makes sense to be a sellable, attractive neighborhood, the yield plan, and I don't think that this would be approved if it went through planning commission this way the lots are split. So I really think that they're trying to get a few more homes and make sense in the yield plan. So even with all this acreage, I don't feel the yield plan gives them 9 homes. And then last of all, Mark Garrell makes a point about the wetlands, and so did another alderman, John Hawkins. I had a wetland done near my home. I had a big wetland delineation, and the report from Stantec, and it was much more defined. It was much more clear. Frankly, it was a much thicker report than we have before us tonight. And this is almost 9-10 acres. I think there are questions about the wetlands. And I'd like those questions answered, because this is a good developer. There's no doubt about it. And you'll look through the history of my votes, probably supported everything you've done. Very quality. It's got a lot of really dedicated people to attest to the work. If anything, I hope you feel good about that. But I think we need a few more questions on the wetlands. I mean, look at Sarah Chudnow. We've heard from the people that have experienced it since it's been built. We had the same insurances for drainage when that was built. If it's true what they're saying, which is one resident said, we've never had water in this area, we had a garden until that went in. Well, then somehow the city has failed. So to take a step back, I'd approve tabling this, just to make absolutely sure. That way the neighbors may understand the benefit, or they might not, but I'd like to get a little more information about this wetland before approval.
City Attorney.
I'll defer to Mr. Worth first. Well, just a couple of things. I mean, they're not doing away with any green space. I heard that comment. The 4 lots was what it's currently platted, not what it's currently zoned. The zoning allows 1 house per acre, depending on the yield. I guess the one thing we haven't asked is for staff's opinion regarding the wetlands and the direction the water's running and the impact of Sarah Chudnow, and perhaps we ought to hear from them. And then if we have more questions, maybe we'll hear from council, but, discuss tabling the proposal. So I guess I'd ask staff to address the direction the water's running, what has happened with Sarah Chudnow. I do have one more comment, and that's to Alderman Gerald's comment about his issue. His issue is Lake Michigan. It's a different beast than what happens with respect to water issues and the city's enforcement rights with agreements under our own planned unit developments or under our own ordinances. Totally different than what's happened on Lake Michigan. But anyhow, if perhaps we could hear from staff about what they've learned and observed and can report to us on the water issues.
I will confirm what everyone has been saying about the general area being extremely flat. It also drains generally to the Milwaukee River, which is not near to this site, but in some areas is no more than 3 feet lower than this site. So the water has to travel a long distance with not a large amount of grade change. I can also state that prior to this development moving forward to Planning Commission, we had no reported drainage issues in the area. So while I don't doubt that everyone has been dealing with drainage issues in the area, we hadn't had any investigation or evaluation from the city's perspective as to whether there's any issues with, for example, a potential for a back-pitched culvert. So the topography does generally drain from east to west and from south to north. Whether the water is actually flowing in that direction is something that would have to be evaluated in a rain event. The residents may be doing that on their own, but it's not something that city staff has done because we weren't aware that there was a potential issue out there. So of course, as a part of any development, the off-site drainage would also be required to be evaluated, and anything like a back-pitched culvert or a failure of a ditch to drain in the proper direction would be evaluated and addressed as a part of the project, and frankly, evaluated and addressed not as a part of the project if there's an issue in the public roadway. And if there's not, and it's a private drainage issue, staff would also provide potential direction as to what people could do to help mitigate their issues on their property.
And are you comfortable that the proposal, assuming it does get DNR and approval, that it is not going to exacerbate the water issue in the neighborhood?
I do need to be sure to clarify something very specifically. Our stormwater ordinance regulates the rate of discharge, not the volume of discharge. So what would be required as a part of the development would be that the rate of discharge from the site would be less than or equal to that of the site pre-development. That requires on-site retention of water that would hold back water in large storm events to discharge at the same rate. But there is no question that with the addition of any impervious surface, you are increasing the volume of runoff that comes. But that's why you install stormwater facilities, is to address that exact issue. So I would state that as a part of this, we would enforce the ordinance that requires that the rate of discharge would be equal to or less than that of pre-development conditions. I can't go as far as without seeing a design as saying that a development would improve anyone's drainage issues out there, but it would certainly be able to address any of the drainage issues on the actual site.
And have you had any, you haven't had any complaints
Since the Planning Commission, we've had two.
about Sarah Chudnow?
Not directly, aside from this pond that's on that property right there, the majority of the Sarah Chudnow runoff actually goes through Winding Hollow.
Thank you.
And to Alderman Adams' issue of the yield plan, the yield plan that was submitted was approved by the Planning Commission, otherwise we wouldn't be here tonight. Otherwise, they wouldn't be entitled to
And I did not vote for this at planning, so.
Right, but the yield plan was legitimate, otherwise it wouldn't have been approved for a planned unit development. Mr. City Attorney.
Right. Nobody specifically asked, although I do know that Ms. Lamb raised the question during her comments. So as a reminder to folks, although there is a memo in the packet on it, that there was a protest petition that was filed. The petition itself indicated that it was for both rezoning parcels. And so we kind of looked at both of them individually, recognizing that all of the petitions said they were for both. As a result of that analysis, we determined that the rezoning for 1468, which is the rezoning for the actual lakeside development parcel, that the protest petitions were sufficient to trigger that protest requirement. Jack, do you have a like an overhead map of kind of the neighboring parcels by any chance on there? That's good, Jack. So in the case of the rezoning of the lower lot, you'll see that that would be the smaller odd shaped at the southwest portion of the lot there. There were petitions that were signed that would be immediately adjacent to that redevelopment. That would be the two parcels directly to the south of that property. There are two little rectangles there. Those would be the two that are immediately adjacent that would qualify. Neither of those in and of themselves are sufficient to trigger the protest provisions of the ordinance. However, as you'll recall, the protest petition statute does provide for 20% of the ownership of either the lots within the rezoning area, immediately adjacent to the rezoning area, or the 20% of the owners immediately across any right-of-way that exists. In this case, there were two properties that were on the opposite side that did sign off. They were on the southern end of the property there as well. And in both, in one of those cases, one of those properties alone was sufficient to trigger the 20%. And so for 1468, there is a valid protest petition which would require a 3/4 majority vote. So if all of the council votes, that would require 6 votes to pass on that rezoning. With respect to the second rezoning, the 1467 rezoning, that's the Sarah Chudnow piece. In that case, the immediately adjacent parcels include the two parcels immediately to the north. There's the one that is the bulk of the property there, and then there's the piece that's just to the north of that touches on the corner. And then on the lower end, you also have that rightmost parcel that is of those two parcels on the south side of the other parcel that abuts on the one side there. Those properties are not sufficient when you calculate the total area to trigger the rezoning protest petition provisions. Likewise, the immediately adjacent across the street test is not met because there are none of the properties immediately adjacent across the street that applied. I would note that there was one additional protest petition that was filed. That is one of the properties along Mequon Road. Obviously, that doesn't abut or is immediately across the street from either of the parcels, so that wasn't included as part of that analysis at all, but it did exist. So for the Sarah Chudnow piece, a standard majority vote would be fine for the rezoning on that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have ordinance 1468. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrow?
No.
Alderman Hawkins?
No.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Adams?
No.
Alderman Strelchek?
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
No.
I changed my vote to no. That way I can bring a motion to reconsider.
Now we have to do math.
What?
Now we have to do the math.
Well, it already failed.
No, there's
so-
no math.
It's failed.
It fails.
Oh, man.
3 to 5. Motion fails. We now have ordinance 1467.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve.
I have a question.
Is there any
We
discussion?
discuss. Well, if for some reason, I mean, obviously, this ultimately does not go through with this particular developer, are we still amending the site? Or is this contingent on the first ordinance going through?
There would be no point to approving this one if the other one was failed.
That's the point, and it just failed.
So I'll move to table.
I'll second.
Second. Okay.
Motion and second to table. Call the roll.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins. Alderman Nurbin. Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
That's unanimous, and that item is tabled. Okay, folks, we're all done with that issue. Moving on with our agenda, personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Seeing none, we move on to public officials' reports. There are none. Moving on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda includes Common Council minutes of April, Common Council minutes, organizational meeting minutes of April, Architectural Board minutes of March, Board of Appeals meeting minutes of April, Bureau of Permits and Inspection report for March, Finance Personnel Committee minutes of March, Fire Department report for March, Mequon Thiensville Bike Pedestrian Commission meeting minutes of February, Planning Commission minutes of February, Public Safety Committee minutes of February, Public Welfare Committee minutes of March, Public Works Committee minutes of February and March, River Advisory Committee minutes of February, Sewer Utility District Commission minutes of October, and Zoning Enforcement and Site Compliance report through May of 2016.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Alderman Adams.
I just have a question. On the Sewer Utility District Commission meeting, did we approve those already at the Sewer Utility District, and we just held it to come here? Because we have to approve it at that level first before it comes to us.
Yes, you did. You approved it last month.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to ordinance 1471, an ordinance amending section 2-204 of the Mequon Municipal Code as it relates to identifying and defining department heads. This was tabled by the Finance and Personnel Committee this evening, and this is a first reading. Resolutions. Resolution 3373, a resolution awarding the 2016 GSB 88 bituminous seal contract to Farner Asphalt Sealers, LLC, Kaukauna, in the amount of $266,030. Alderman Adams.
Public Works viewed this evening and unanimously approved it, so I move approval of Resolution 3373.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Resolution 3373. Call the roll.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3374, a resolution awarding the 2016 road improvement contract to Payne and Dolan of Jackson, Wisconsin, in the amount of $962,170. Alderman Adams.
Once again, Public Works approved this unanimously because there wasn't any discussion. I just want to mention that it came in about 14 or 15% less than expected, just like the resolution before us. It's nice that the price of fuel is down. I move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Yeah, it's unanimous, and that is adopted. Resolution 3375, a resolution authorizing execution of a professional services agreement with Matrix Consulting Group, Mountain View, California, for completion of a human resource compliance audit in an amount not to exceed $23,250. This was recommended by Finance Personnel Committee this evening.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Alderman Nervin.
In committee, I was kind of on the fence on this one. It is 23,000 and change. And, you know, it's be another stack of paper study that'll be done, that go next to all the other stacks of papers and previous studies we've had done. But what made me vote for it in committee, there was a question that was brought up in the discussion at committee regarding records retention and how we stored them, and I got a different answer from two different staff members on the same question, and if we're not on the same page, it just makes me think there could be a gap in what we're doing, and that's what made me tip my hat towards voting for it, because HR, and you don't want to have a gap in your records or mishandle something, and if we're not on the same page, I think there might be a possibility there to find something, so that's what made me support it at the committee level, so I'll vote for it again at Common Council.
Alderman Worth.
Well, I voted no for a few reasons. One, I'm never that fond of hiring consultants unless, you know, other than for very specific things. If, you know, we ought to be able to figure out for a lot less than $23,000 what the rules are for human resources. Just seems like an incredible amount of money to figure out what the laws are and the record retention policies and other things described there. I would think a good seminar might be a whole lot cheaper. But on the other hand, I don't know if this was in the budget or not, and I'm new to the Finance Personnel Committee, but I voted no.
Alderman Garrell.
Well, of course, I wasn't there, but I think that just looking at it internally instead of spending the $23,500 and setting up, I think Will could probably set up a system that would handle this. So, and as being a fiscal conservative, I would probably vote no. So that's all.
Alderman Adams.
I was concerned when I noticed that we're going with, out of 7 groups, one of the absolute costliest ones. It went from $13,000 total dollars to 44, and we're hiring one at 23,000. I would think we could, when I look at why, I don't think that the reason is good enough to necessarily go with that group. If we're going to go, I would rather go with the lower cost group to meet the letter of the law. So at this point, I'm not leaning towards voting for this.
Alderman Hawkins.
Well, I agree with the previous comments. I think we're relying too heavily on outside agencies to review things that could and ought to be reviewed internally, so I'll be voting no.
Alderman Strelchak.
I think when your lead staff comes forward with a request for review on policy and procedures and compliance, knowing how conservative we are with funds, I think it's something to just pause and take a moment to listen to. In Finance and Personnel, Mr. Jones did explain his reasoning a little bit further, and I'd invite him to do so here. This covers some of the concerns that are internal with and creating potential risk for the city because we don't have a strictly dedicated HR individual running our HR department. So to look at it internally, we don't have somebody strictly dedicated to doing HR. We have Jesse standing in and helping out with that. The cost I balked at as well. That was covered in finance, and in reviewing the reports, our city administrator felt that the company that was at a little bit higher price did a significantly more thorough job and answered more of the questions that he was looking to evaluate what's going on with staff. If you all remember at budget, the fire department came forward with some concerns, asked for a specific review of the fire department. If I remember correctly, this budget item here is less than what that budget item was, and it would address some of the staffing concerns and staffing compliance with the volunteer fire department, which, quite frankly, there's questions on. I supported it in finance and personnel. I'm fiscally conservative. I also don't want to create any issues for our city. I don't want us to miss something and step in a pothole along the way. $23,000 is a very little amount to invest in compliance when it comes to a city level and not be at risk of being out of compliance. So I will support this.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Adams.
No.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
No.
Alderman Worth.
No.
Alderman Garrow.
No.
Alderman Hawkins. Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
3 to 5, and the motion fails. Moving on to Resolution 3376, a resolution amending the City of Mequon 2016 Employee Compensation Plan in connection with the establishment of new and reclassified positions. This was recommended by Finance Personnel Committee.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion?
Wait a minute.
Seeing
Is that
none?
the one we tabled, or is that there were two that had similar names?
We tabled the resolution regarding the city clerk, but that is not on our common council agenda.
This was approved.
That's a different one.
Unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes. This one was approved by the Finance Personnel.
Was it
Alderman Adams.
approved unanimously then?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
That's unanimous, and it is adopted. Resolution 3377, a resolution authorizing the replacement of squad video cameras and the purchase of body-worn cameras. This was recommended by Public Safety Committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Pouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
That's unanimous, and that is adopted. Resolution 3379, a resolution authorizing renewal of a mutual cooperation agreement for the City of Mequon's participation in the Home Investment Partnership Program administered by Waukesha County.
Mayor, Public Welfare took a look at this evening. We tabled it to the next meeting for request on some information on the results on the last umpteen years that we've had this program, so.
Okay.
Make a motion to table.
Second.
Motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That item is tabled. Resolution 3380 was already adopted earlier this evening. We have no specified unfinished business, no petitions, memorials, remonstrances, or communications. Under specified miscellaneous new business, we have one aldermanic appointment of Harold Nonkin to the Ethics Board. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve for approval.
Nervin and
It's your district.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move into closed session. Pursuant.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, nothing that I have to share, at least initially, would warrant a closed session, so I could just share that, and then if anybody wishes to discuss further at that point, we could consider a motion.
Good enough.
I need to recuse myself, so I'm going to step out.
All right, so the update, real quick for everybody, it's just two things. Number one, we talked last time about kind of steps in the process. You'll recall one of the steps was going to be a scheduling conference. That conference date has now been set for July 6th in front of the judge. So nothing too much to report other than that. Beyond that, the association had reached out to one of the council members to address some of the existing ongoing concerns on the property, such as maintenance of the lake, mowing of the grassy areas, that kind of stuff. That we believe has given us basis to reach out to that organization to at least discuss those issues and perhaps maybe then discuss further issues on top of that. I have so advised the title insurance company's lawyer to make that happen, and was not able to touch base with him today to confirm whether he was able to do that or not, but I know that he's working on it. So those are the two updates that I have.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn.
Here, here.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.